here we go.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is a meeting of our Education and Culture Committee, and today's oversight work session is on our Arts and Humanities Council of Montgomery County. I want to start off by recognizing that October is National Arts and Humanities Month, and so it's a coast-to-coast collective of folks, recognizing the importance of arts and culture in our community. As we talked about last session before we broke for the summer and had a meeting with Arts and Humanities, we knew that many of the challenges that are facing us, whether it's COVID, whether it's police reform, whether it's racial unrest and social and civil justice, all of those kinds of things are being depicted in artwork across this country and across this world. And it's helping us to heal. It's helping to bring us together. But it's also important to recognize the challenges that are still being faced by our arts and humanities community, our culture community throughout this world. And so I want to give an opportunity for Ms. Jenkins to just give a little taste of what it is that our arts and culture communities are still feeling and experiencing during this very difficult time. So Ms. Jenkins, thank you very much for your leadership. Thank you for your partnership with the council. Thank you for continuing to lead our arts and humanities organizations here in Montgomery County and continuing to deliver on what we know is incredibly important, a healing, powerful way in which artists can communicate and help our communities.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice, and I want to thank you, Councilmember Navarro and Councilmember Juwanda, for your leadership during this pandemic. I think that there's very few of us on the planet who don't know about the both the impact that the pandemic had on the arts and humanities, but also the role that the arts and humanities have played over the last several months to uplift communities, support communities, and to be the voice for social justice for communities, not to mention the economic impact of the arts and what's been lost as far as our communities are concerned. So what's been lost is that we knew that by July 2021, we'd have an $81 million problem. We've lost about $66 million in revenue. Our debt increased by about $9 million, and many used their reserves. Now, using reserves is a good thing, right? That's what you should do on a rainy day. But when it continues to rain, when the pandemic continues, when closures continue, then what we see is that Montgomery County lost a projected $57 million in economic activity and local audience spending from about over 9,000 canceled cultural events in 2020. So recovering that is not going to be easy, but it's been made a lot easier because of the vision of Montgomery County leadership. So what we've seen in the sector are some interesting things. Despite continuing challenges, we've seen resiliency, we've seen creativity, we've seen productivity, we've seen compassion, commitment, and optimism. People understood not too long after we were the first to close that we'd have to get creative. We'd have to use the juice that we use externally usually. We'd have to kind of turn that inward so that we could recover. So what we've seen is some organizational right sizing. Some organizations just understood that now with the pandemic, they had to contract, and some of that has been good for some organizations in that they've been able to maximize their potential, look at their assets, and really organize those for their further business endeavors. They've also began to address DEIA goals. And a lot of that has been due to the fact that we've been able to introduce the idea of diversity, equity, inclusion that dovetails directly with the county's declaration and resolution for race equity. And so when we are able to partner with you, exactly as you said, Councilmember Rice, when we're able to partner with you and join with you in addressing DEIA goals the way we have through our evaluative criteria and through our guidelines, it's helped organizations understand that the opportunities with expanding audiences to look at audiences that they might not have considered before. They've done that through the use of technology. Because of the pandemic, they had to look inward, but they were able to address an outside audience with technology. They've expanded virtual and hybrid programming. They have increased community partnerships in great ways, and there is a renewed focus on contributed income. So with the $3.6 million that we were able to distribute, we were able to use not only the county's funds, but we've gotten few tranches of funds from Maryland State Arts Council, which has been incredible. And the artists and organizations and scholars that we have been able to fund have repeatedly told us that we have been their lifeline in the community. So that sounds pretty good. We've been really great, but in addition to what we've been able to do for what we thought was our core portfolio, in FY22, we saw almost a 23% increase in applications because of the need over the county overall. 25% increase in artists and scholars grants, 27% increase in programming capacity building grants, and a 157% increase in advancement grants, which tells us that people are looking to the future, planning for the future, and asking for funding to support that future planning so that they'll understand what right sizing is. What we've seen is that also we are now moving more and more and more throughout the county with good representation now from smaller communities like in Durwood. We're seeing more in, we've seen an increase somewhat in Wheaton, more in Tacoma Park, in Gaithersburg, in Kensington. So now we're seeing that these diversity initiatives have allowed us to widen the opportunities for all throughout the county, which is our goal. So we see that there's still need though, and we see that we still have been we're the first to close, the last to open. And so what we're seeing is that audience want to come back. And for those who are hosting live programming, audiences are coming back, but at a third or a quarter of the audience size that organizations had before. So it's hard to continue to be your economic engine, and you know of the deep economic impact that we bring, but it's hard when audiences still are somewhat hesitant to come back. There is a stigma on our sector being the first to close, the last to open. People are wondering, are we safe? We know that we are, and we have great COVID protocols in place, but still it takes a while for that confidence to be rebuilt, and we are eager to do so. We see organizations who have done incredible things to try to open both equitably and safely, and we will continue to ask for your support. We asked last year that we were able to continue that emergency support of $3.5 million. We know that the sector needs it. We're seeing these smaller and mid-sized organizations now starting to stand back up. They were really decimated. They didn't have reserves. They didn't have any deep pockets. But now we're seeing that through this support, some are able to stand, and we're seeing these culturally diverse, multicultural communities really come up with incredible programming that's serving the community. So I hope we can count on you for your continued support, because we need it, and because it is a great way to continue to partner and serve Montgomery County residents. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Jenkins. And here to that, for anybody who, as Councilmember Juwanda says, the millions that are watching at home, I hope that folks heard that loud and clear. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we gave you an opportunity to kind of level set where we are, where we've been, and the struggles that still lie ahead. One of the folks who was a visionary in that respect in terms of continuing to make sure that our arts and humanities community was elevated was Councilmember Navarro when she was council president back in 2019 and decided to realign our committees to allow for arts and humanities to maintain a higher level of visibility. And that's why today is so important in having this conversation around the support that we need to continue to give to our arts and humanities community, to our culture community, and how important it is to our recovery. And so with that, let me turn to Councilmember Navarro for some brief opening remarks, and then I'll turn to Councilmember Juwanda, and then we'll turn to Ms. Chen to get in. But I didn't want to shortchange this issue because I think that it's really important for folks to hear just what's at stake and what it is that we're doing. So Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Jenkins. It's really good to see you, Councilmember Juwanda, as well. I so much appreciated your remarks because it's so critical that we as leaders also take advantage of opportunities to reflect on what has happened and what we're still going through, which has been just so extraordinary and just so, transformational on many different levels. And although there's just been so much pain and so much disruption, some of the things that I picked up from your introductory remarks is that it also opened up opportunities for innovation. It really kind of fast-tracked opportunities to think differently, to reach audiences in a different way. And more than anything, I imagine, because I do have daughters that are in sort of the creative space as well in their own right, this notion of art as a way and as a vehicle for healing and for just really expressing a lot of this extraordinary, time of grief and confusion and anxiety. And so I really want to thank you, and I want to thank the arts and humanities community for being that vehicle, for providing those opportunities, for being so resilient to also, imagine different ways to provide, this kind of outlet and access to our community as a whole. I mean, to me, it spoke volumes, for example, when BlackRock decided to just shift completely to help the community. And a lot of people were wondering, why would an art center do this? Well, because that is what exactly art leads to. It leads to this recognition that community has to be supported and that we are, connected in more ways than just a physical space. And so that to me was so inspiring to see. But it speaks again to this notion of innovation from a humanity perspective, not necessarily in a real techie way. And that is very inspiring. So I just, again, I'm so grateful. And every time I have an opportunity to go to the Marion Fryer Plaza and I walk through the public art piece, I always find something new. I love it. It's like a space there full of little surprises, right? Oh, look at this here, look at that there. Wow. It's just fills my heart when I see so many families, so many children, so many young people enjoying that. It gives it a sense of place, but also a sense of hope and inspiration. So I'm really excited about what's to come. I do believe that we have an amazing opportunity to really, truly enhance our arts and humanities community, take advantage of the arts district designations that we have, and make it such a vibrant, even more vibrant than it has been. But recognizing that, no doubt, this was really tough, and I want to thank all my colleagues. I mean, we didn't forget, when we were rushing to get all of this relief dollars out and approve all these special appropriations, the arts and humanities was a sector that we understood we needed to help in some way as well. So all in all, just to express, gratitude and really looking forward to see what comes out of this extraordinary time in our lives.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Navarro. Let me turn to Councilmember Juwanda.
Thank you, Mr. Rice, and good morning to Councilmember Navarro, and it's good to see you, Ms. Jenkins. I was just thinking here, smiling, how fortunate we are to have someone like you at the helm during a time like this. You look at other places around the country, and as you so eloquently put, and my colleagues have said, we're we're not on the any sort of map. There's no roadmap for this. And speaking to one of our great arts organizations over the weekend at a community event, and though it's been very tough, as you described, we have worked with you to make it less so. And I just really appreciate that. As I look at everything that we're all going through, as we've said from the beginning, as we dealt with the, racial equity and social justice, reckoning that we had during the pandemic, I still cannot believe how much we've gone through in the last 18 months. I just, and I remember Councilmember Rice showing the picture of the mural of George Floyd. That was, such an important expression for so many. And you can just go down the line, all the art and that has been created and used as an outlet and still being used. And we've been able to fund and try to keep our organizations afloat and realize that work is not done, because we're going to need them now more than ever. And so I'm just glad we have the Arts Council and you at the leadership. So we're ready to continue that. Our children need it. Our adults need it. We need it. Our seniors need it. We all need these organizations to be thriving and to rebound so that we can continue the great, not only revenue generation, but the healing that needs to happen in our community. So just happy that you're here and looking forward to getting into the packet and seeing how we can continue to support this work. So thank you very much.
Here, here. And so let me just add that another person who also has been a great supporter, now you can turn back on your camera, Ms. Chen, because I'm talking about you, is going to be Ms. Chen, who has certainly worked hand in hand with Ms. Jenkins to make sure that everything that the council's intentions were certainly put forward. Look, this hasn't been easy. We've had so many different moving parts, things moving here and there that have been tremendously challenging for our staff. But at the end of the day, having that commitment and making sure that we can make these things happen and being able to think outside of the box on how we can continue to support our arts organization to move them forward and get them the support that they need. We really appreciate it. So thank you, Ms. Chen, for all of your great work. We have a packet that's before us. I want to turn it over to you, where we're going to be briefed on some of the NDA, our non-department account initiatives that we have going on that, of course, prioritize some of our most impacted in our arts communities. And really want to thank Ms. Jenkins and Ms. Chen for working together to make sure that we focus on that, akin to Councilmember Navarro leading us through our racial equity and social justice work. And so we certainly want to make sure that the investments that we make are in line with that same prioritization. And I know that Ms. Jenkins, even before we did that, you were prioritizing that. Sometimes you got flack for it, but at the end of the day, folks realized just how important it was and why we needed to do it. And that's a beautiful thing. And so it's great to be on the cusp of being ahead of the game. And so you certainly were there when it came to that prioritization, but really just want to thank everybody involved for all of their great work. So with that, let me turn it over to Ms. Chen to walk us through the presentation.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Rice, and good morning, Councilmember Navarro and Councilmember Juwanda. You did, everyone, millions plus one, met Susan Jenkins, Chief Executive Officer of the Arts and Humanities Council of Montgomery County. I was remiss and did not ask our newest member to the team, which is Shantae Jackson from OMB. Told her I'd tell her that thank you. Turn on your camera and wave. Thank you so much, and I apologize for not adding you to the packet. She's new to our team. Very quickly, over in the packet, there is one attachment and 3 links for the public to review what has been going on with the Arts and Humanities Council. The first is a presentation that was given to George Washington University fiscal year 22 overview of activities of the Arts Council, as well as some new initiatives that they are wrapping up by the end of this fiscal year. And then 3 links in our April budget packet that was approved by full council and the consent calendar. We have the approved fiscal year 22 operating budget for the Arts and Humanities Council non-departmental account, which included an increase in administrative capacity. And finally, the Public Arts Trust, which is a capital improvement project budget that we will be reviewing in full in January. And that's it. Thank you.
Fantastic. So what I see here, and let me just ask my colleagues if they have some questions about some of the grants process, some of the initial funding that's there, as well as whether or not we think that that amount is going to be where we need to be, or whether we need to be prepared to add more. So, well, actually, let me turn to Ms. Jenkins, because I do want to have you comment on that part of it, because I think that that's incredibly important for us to understand as well.
All right. So your specific question, council member?
So I think that it's around whether or not, based on what we have already budgeted versus what we'll see in the county executive's budget, there'll need to be significant increase to be able to make sure reopening is not going to be easy, right? And so even the challenges that we face. So let me actually frame this a different way, because I think it's important. And as I was talking to, Councilmember Juwanda was talking to an arts organization. I was talking to a restaurant this past weekend, an owner. And so we were just talking about some of the challenges they have in terms of hiring, which has meant that they've had to pay more. So now your budget is higher than it was before. But you're also not getting the same amount of business that you had before. So those numbers have changed significantly. And so I'm curious as to whether or not we've started to quantify what that may be, and what you see on the horizon in terms of what the need for our arts communities will be as they start to reopen, but understanding that business model will not be the same for some time. Certainly when it comes to some of our large venues as well as our smaller venues, either way, those capacities aren't going to be the same. I was at Washington football team game last Sunday and saw firsthand the complete difference in terms of attendance and how the higher priced, very nice seats were completely empty, as well as some of the cheaper seats. So all across the board, folks all across our arts and entertainment are experiencing these huge drops in revenue. And so I'm just curious as to what you see on the horizon for our arts and humanities community.
Okay, thanks for framing it in that way. And it's really interesting because I guess I've never expressed it this way. So let me just kind of pull it out as it's coming to me. So we know from economists that during a recession, during a downturn, it's often that people go and get re-educated, right? They try to figure out what new skill sets they might want to have, and they kind of look at what the economy is telling you, and then they look at those jobs to where there might be future opportunities. So as I'm thinking about it in the way that you've proposed it, I know that, a lot of people have gone back to college and are getting re-educated. And so we're seeing a lot of people who are coming into our field with advanced degrees, bachelor's, master's, and even PhDs who are coming into the sector. And for those of us who are practicing in the sector who may or may not have those advanced degrees, organizations are going to look to lead teams for retention, right? They're going to look at who those managers are who are strong, and they're going to try to do those things to retain them. So I think that we'll see kind of the same thing, Councilmember Rice. We'll see that salaries are going to need to go up so that we can retain and attract good staff who have the marketing or organizational development or human resources management acumen in order to come into these organizations and help organizations right size, right, and get themselves back together. Then they're also going to have to go through our lens, for racial equity, and that, we have been committed to these three basic principles that led me through the conversation that I had with you a few seconds ago, committed to brave conversation about inequity, committed to sharing power. Like, how do we give more power to those who have had less, and how do we equalize power to those who have traditionally, been in the most powerful positions? And then the idea that the community has to opine on it, right? Nothing about us without us can be for us. So I think that what I see is just that. When I just showed you that chart about what we saw in growth, and that presentation I gave to George Mason University after I gave it to our entire constituency, and we have a kickoff every year that talks about funding trends. So I talked about what you as the council members did for us in the last, in FY21 that gives us the FY22 budget. And then I did that for for graduate students at George Mason to help them understand how an arts council works. But in that presentation, we've responded to what we've heard from the community, is that, we see this huge growth in the communities. We see that the smaller organizations, you really see them. So that's the program and capacity building grants. We're going to need to enhance those just in our base budget, because we've seen that more artists and scholars who are starting their own businesses or trying to keep themselves afloat as entrepreneurs. And then in advancement grant, we see, like I said, a lot of planning. People are trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, even us as the Arts Council, speaking just for a moment to the Public Art Trust budget, I'm so grateful, remain so, that you've been so visionary about maintaining the Public Art Trust budget at the higher level where it should sit based on what the legislation asks for. And that is allowing us now to do this pre-planning for a cultural plan. So when I think about Councilmember Navarro's desire to see this cultural center in Wheaton, I see it not as a standalone, the way we've done other things before, but as part of a cogent, very thoughtful process about how we are going to empower traditionally marginalized communities, those communities that did not get those resources. And we know other communities have many, many other communities. So how are we going to equalize this? So what I'm seeing is a demand for equalization right across the board. I'm seeing this resiliency, but I'm seeing that demand is coming up from these small, multicultural, culturally acute organizations, and we need to continue to support them. Because if we're talking about diversifying all of the organizations overall and making sure that they're representative of the county, we've got to make sure that those small and up and coming organizations are able to partner with traditionally larger European, say, facing organizations, so that we can do that kind of community outreach, empowering those canons of organizations, the bigger organizations, making sure that they're stable, but that they have more resources to get other monies, and then empowering the other community partners so that there really is some change from up inside organizations versus just trying to throw more money and hoping everybody will do the right thing. I think we can be a lot more strategic in this way.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Long answer, sorry.
Yeah, no. It's actually really good, because again, I don't think, unfortunately, that we spend enough time talking about this and getting out in front of some of these issues. And then when we get to budget time and we see that, okay, we're a little bit short here and we're now just talking about what that planning phase is and what it should be. But if we have these conversations ahead of time, before the county executive's budget is even formulated, and we understand some of the challenges that are still before us, it gives us the ability, us, the collective we, both the council and the county executive, a better opportunity to work together to make sure that we're addressing these issues so that we don't have to have these discussions in the budget cycle. We already know and have identified where some of our challenges are and where our opportunities are as well, to make sure that we're supporting our organizations. I know, Ms. Jenkins, that you have a presentation, but I did just want to give an opportunity for folks to ask some questions specifically about some of the budget stuff first, because I know that this is pressing. I know that this is on everyone's mind as we, start to really get into a lot of the conversations around what next year is going to be. So let me turn to my colleagues and see if they have any questions regarding that, and then we'll go into your presentation next. So Councilmember Navarro.
I guess I don't have, a lot of very specific questions, mostly just want to make sure that Ms. Jenkins knows that this is a priority for us for sure. And really would like to, be mindful, and I'm expecting for you to give us some ideas, as well as share with us where do you see things going. As I said earlier, I think that because we have leveraged a lot, there's all this room for innovation and doing things a little bit differently. So even though I don't have specific questions, I guess just overall, what do you see as some of those extraordinary opportunities? And then specifically for Wheaton, as we have already begun to put, into the CIP funding for the Arts and Cultural Center there, how do you then see, this particular project going? How do you see the activities that have already taken place? And then, as you said, as part of this ecosystem, where would you, see opportunities that might require some funding in the short term, so that we can continue the momentum there as well? It's I think so important for people to know that this particular arts and cultural center in Wheaton, it's very needed, because to have a place that literally is able to be a vessel for the extraordinary, diverse arts and, humanities talent that we have in our county, given that we're so diverse, international in nature. I'm very excited by that possibility, and that is the goal and the hope for this center. So just wondering, in general, where do you see that? How do you see the activities that have taken place up until now, and in terms of supports for those artists, how do you see in terms of funding, where what we may be looking at in order to continue to support that effort there?
Great. Well, in terms of cogent thinking, when we had the great opportunity to look at the Thrive 2050 master plan, we were able to make some very strong statements about how we believe that arts and culture should be integrated throughout the Thrive 2050 plan, not just in the art and design section, but throughout the document as an integral part. I think it's really critical that you, especially this committee, and your vision for the committee is not to hold the arts and humanities, arts and cultural sector apart from whatever else we're thinking about from an economic development standpoint, but as an integral part of, because that's the way I think residents view the community. That's the way that I think the region views the community, and to hold it separate and apart is problematic for me. So I want to just thank Carolyn, and because Carolyn and I, we're in constant contact, and the conversation that we had about the art and design section of Thrive 2050 is that this cultural plan that we're hoping for will really sit in its place, and the cultural plan would have these very long reaching tentacles that really talked about all the sections of Thrive 2050 and how art, design, and culture needed to be integrated throughout the document. So it's still my hope that we have that opportunity. That opportunity has just preliminarily given us the chance to now look at some consultants who are well-versed in this community planning, cultural plan, and we're starting to get ready to do research with the community that really talks about what is it that you want to see in the place that you live and work? What is it that you need? so that as we are making these decisions and as we're thinking about all of the investment that we've made already in the Wheaton Cultural Plan, that we've hired these consultants, we've done a feasibility plan, we understand what needs to be done. How does that then fit with what we might need to do in Darnestown or Clarksburg? How do we tie a string around all of this that said, hey, look, if we have these initial investments, say at Strathmore and at Roundhouse and at Imagination Stage in this particular area, how do we reflect on that? What's missing? And then how do we build that out, knowing already that we have, say, one small anchor in the Wheaton Cultural Center. We know what that's about. We already knew that that section needed support. Now, what about Langley Park? What about other areas, both inside the Beltway, if you will, and outside, that we need to do that would strengthen that overall more holistic view of who we are as a community? So I think that those investments have to be there. You know, I have colleagues across the nation, say in Seattle, that embed the arts and culture sector, whether it's artists or it's the Arts Council or members of the Arts Council board, into different communities, into different committees, so that we always have this voice that says what's going on with the arts and culture sector when we're talking about infrastructure, bike roads, parks, whatever. I think we've done a much better job of getting before those different departments throughout the county, but I think that that's going to be really important too. This idea that the council member Rice opened up with, that we are a partnership, strengthening that partnership so that it's not a got you culture. And what I mean by that is, like, so I go to a meeting and I notice that arts isn't included, and I say, see, you haven't included me. I'd like to get away from that mentality and get to the place where my colleague looks over and says, what will we need from the arts and culture sector to make this really work? And that developing that kind of interdepartmental respect for our colleagues, I think, will be really important. And then I think lastly, something that I've remarked on before is that we have several A&E districts here, but I just had a site visit, as I was saying earlier, with Maryland State Arts Council, and we are completely disparate. The three may talk to each other or may not, but there's nothing that ties it all together. Now, I know that we have some colleagues up county who want to think about an A&E district there. And I'm feeling like if it ain't broke, don't make it broker. And what I mean by that is that they're not working together. And I think that that's an issue for us because we have a big county, a county as big as some states. I think the A&E districts should work better together. And is there a structure that either convenes them in concert with the Arts and Humanities Council, or a way that we all talk together in a more formal way? Because I think it could make us stronger if those A&E districts were talking in concert and were reflecting together as others say, we'd like to join in that fray. And then asking ourselves, are those benefits real, or does it just make us feel good to say that you get tax benefits and you get something? Are we really leveraging that? Are we doing the best that we can from a legislative and administrative standpoint to make those A&E districts really vibrant? And I think those are questions we should ask ourselves before we add others, because I'm just, frankly, I run the Arts Council and have for 13 years, but I'm just really not sure what's happening with the A&E districts. And I think we should know. I think we all should know, because how can we leverage one another if we don't? So I don't know if that's answered all your questions, but those are some of my thoughts.
No, I appreciate that. I think that that's why these sessions are important, because usually we come for specific items and take specific votes and that's it. But this is an opportunity to delve deeper and just brainstorm, if you will, to exchange ideas without, having to be so single-minded in terms of what's in front of us. So I do appreciate your thoughts on that.
So before I turn to Councilmember Juwanda, and I just wanted to ask staff if we actually have one of the slides available, because it's something that actually Ms. Jenkins mentioned, and if not, that's fine. But the one that actually says FY22 organizations by geographic representation. If we have that, if we can bring up that slide for a moment, I just want to highlight something that I thought was very interesting as Ms. Jenkins was talking about some of our regions and what we see that's happening for our communities. And so, and I think Ms. Chen is about to bring that up now. I'll give her a second, but it is one of the things where, let's see here. Ms. Chen, if we don't have it readily available, that's quite all right, because I can just kind of highlight what it is so that
I've
that's
got it. Yep.
Oh, you got it. Okay. And let me just echo while she's bringing that up as well. Councilmember Navarro, one of the things that you mentioned about us having these types of discussions instead of just issue specific is something that I'm hoping that with education and culture we'll start to do more of. I think that again, for us, especially with these two different entities, it really is going to be important for us to begin that forward thinking approach. But as you'll see here, and one of the things that's kind of stunning to me is when I look at, and this is the artists and scholars, but the other one that actually says about the organizations. So I think it's a little bit after this one. So it's like 2 slides down. There we go, that one. So let's just look at Germantown, for example. Germantown has 4.9% of the organizations by geographic representation, but Germantown represents a huge amount of our overall community as a whole. Germantown population is roughly about 10%. It's about a little over 100,000 people. It's the largest quote unquote city in Montgomery County, larger than Rockville, larger than Silver Spring. And so from that standpoint, it's just very interesting about how we have a large pocket of people, but not a lot of geographic representation of arts and culture organizations. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why, and as we look at some of the others, Gaithersburg is another prime example, another large city in Montgomery County, but only at 3.9%. And we also know that these communities are very diverse. And so how do we capitalize and work off of the great diversity that we have in these communities to give us and grow more of these organizations? And so that should also be one of our targets when we're looking at next year's budget. Is it's not just about sustaining, but it's also about what our future plan is. And that's why I like what Councilmember Navarro was talking about and talking about the Thrive 2050 plan and how things are kind of aligned. Because from that perspective, it really is one where there are lots of opportunities, as we see in Wheaton. And as we see there about some of the great things that are going on, but so much more could happen. How we need to continue to sustain and grow those opportunities. So I just wanted to highlight that for us, because I think that it's really important for us as we think about what the future of arts and culture, arts and humanities will be in this county, that we look at this as a heat map, sort of like what we do with all of our other GIS mapping that we see about underserved communities, right? Because when I look at this and I think that, okay, well, if we don't have that, and when I look at our arts and humanities culture as a service to our community, it is something that benefits us. And so from that perspective, not having it there is certainly a detriment to that community. And so we need to continue to grow those opportunities as much as possible, not just for people going, but also for people producing, because there are a lot of artists that are in those communities that could also benefit from a little support to help to make sure that they're growing those types of businesses, those types of entities in those particular regions. So I don't know if you had a comment on that, Ms. Jenkins. If not, I'll turn to Mr. Juwanda. But
I would just say that, I thought that was a really great observation. When you look at this chart and you see, okay, we've made good investments in Silver Spring and we made good investments in Rockville, right? We've made good investments on that side of the county. But here where you see the more culturally diverse, smaller communities, we don't have a lot of huge investments in the arts in this area as far as, say, a cultural entity, a cultural institution, a big building, a big investment in a stage or something like that. But here's where you see a lot of the diversity. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, it's a lot of diversity in the community, but we haven't made the kinds of investments that we really should to serve that diversity. But I think the great thing is that it's a huge opportunity. So if you have 10% of people in Germantown, and you know that future growth, and this is where talking to planners, where is future growth? Where is it going to be? Okay, let's make these investments that can be attractive to those future families and make them want to stay there as we grow out Montgomery County. And just really looking at that both head on and then in an Indian verse, so that we're able to look to the future to think about, okay, we already have good investments and we need to maintain and support those. We can't let them fall by the wayside, but we also have huge opportunities to grow.
Well, thank you very much for that. And let me turn to Councilmember Juwanda, who's on the Fed committee, and so who has Thrive 2050 Dead Center right in front of him, but also certainly has been passionate about making sure that we support economic development opportunities, support our businesses, especially those that are small, minority, women-owned, throughout, which oftentimes there are a lot of our arts and humanities and culture entities throughout the county. So Councilmember Juwanda.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Rice. We have I'll be taking up Fed later this afternoon, so or Thrive and Fed later this afternoon. Well, this is all helpful, and I've appreciated following along with the conversation. I had kind of one broad question and maybe two specific questions, Ms. Jenkins. So the cultural planning process, which I'm really happy that you all are undertaking, and you said you have the consultants. We're obviously such a big community, right? 500 square miles. Councilman Rice was just talking about the diversity in Germantown, and we have such a array of communities that you've mentioned as well. So how are we going to approach, or do you know yet how the consultants and how you're going to approach the cultural planning process, given the diverse communities, and how that's going to go? And is there a timeline, or is it countywide? Are you doing it by specific community? How are you approaching it?
All of those are great questions. I hope I'm able to answer them eventually.
Yeah.
But right now, we're just saying, okay, we understand that the community voice is the central voice for the cultural planning. So right now, we are just doing a little bit of asset mapping. What do we have? So we're starting to go out, look at other departments. What information do you have? What do you have from economic development or infrastructure, whatever? Once we gather that information, we're also going to look at communities that we know are, say, organic arts communities. They don't have a lot of documentation about the community, but we know for a fact that we have a lot of artists that may live or work there. So we're going to try to do a lot of organic work on the ground. We'll marry that organic work with documentation that we have from known entities. So you see my reports are full of data from known entities. Right. So I know how to get it from the known entities. I'm going to try to figure out how to get it from the unknown entities.
Got it.
So when we put all of those assets together, and then when we sit and we throw them on the dining room table of somebody's house and say, okay, we got this, what do we think is missing? Continuing to go out and include community voices. So that'll include all of those from whom we get assets, as well as the organic communities. And we expect that it'll take a while. Yeah. But the only way that we can do it that's really forward thinking is to take our time and to make sure that we're going out there and speaking directly with people. I mean, this is how I first came to the council and learned about Wheaton. I just went out there and started asking a bunch of questions. So we'll do a lot of that. And then we'll look at what the DAC section says. And we made a lot of suggestions to them that had to be stripped away at the end for all kinds of reasons. We'll look at what kind of those things retained, what we missed, and then we'll put all of those assets together, and then we'll do the cultural plan. So we've got a little ways to go. Sure. We're not rushing.
No, that makes sense. And I think in a community as diverse as ours and as large as ours, that's the appropriate way, because we want it to be a reflection of the community, right? It's like looking into a mirror, and we have so many creative folks. And I think it's the right time to do it.
Right.
As part of this community healing and engagement processes, it's a perfect time to as we're looking at Thrive, as we're talking about what is the future of our community, this is a integral part of it. So, well, good. I look forward to keeping us posted as that moves along and participating as it moves along.
Absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to ask about specifically is our resources, our cultural kind of facilities and assets. I think of, I grew up in Quebec Terrace and Long Branch, and I think of that. I remember when that mural was put up, right there at the corner of Piney Branch in New Hampshire, which is in disrepair. And I know that's a tough spot because of it's Prince George's on one side and you've got Montgomery on the other. But, I think this would be a great time to rehab something like that. And and there's other things, that's one example, but there's other things in other parts of the county that I think there's opportunities to maintain or improve or refresh public art and other types of cultural facilities. So I just want to say, is there anything going on with any of that work, that specifically, that area, that mural specifically, or generally with those types of programs? And that's something I'd be interested in. I'm sure my colleagues would be as well, to understand how we can support and, accelerate some of that, because I think that's critical now as part of our rebuilding and healing process. Those public art displays and facilities, we want to make sure that they're up to the standards of Montgomery County.
Absolutely. Well, I'll say that I just went on a walking tour in Long Branch just last week, and it was really great, talking about the impact of the Purple Line and talking about how arts and culture can support the community as it goes through this transition. So I'll say specifically that if there's a public mural that was put up with public dollars that needs to be repaired, then they only need to contact the Arts and Humanities Council, and we'll send our conservator out there. They'll take a look. We can engage the artist or artists that initially made it, and provide support for the conservation and maintenance of publicly funded murals. So that's just
Great.
Something that can be done, no problem.
Okay.
But we also are looking at our public art, and again, thank you very much for the appropriation that we've gotten that brings us up to where the legislation calls for, because it's allowing us to have this conversation about the cultural plan, and will support the work that we need to do for the cultural plan. So I'm excited. And we're looking at places like Long Branch, again, communities that have been marginalized. You don't see the kind of large public art installations in that community that you see in others. Why not? Where did the cultural resources go, and why? Who called for them? How were decisions made that they would be put in that community? So that's really I'm very curious about that, and we're using that as kind of the weather vane that we'll look to help direct us to communities that need more of investment, so that people can gather around the good stuff, as I say, and that I feel with public art. And we're also making huge statements about social justice with public art. And I want to just do a shout out to Councilmember Reamer, who suggested that I sit on the Commission for Remembrance and Reconciliation as a result of that work, as I don't think it's ex officio member of that community. We're doing a very huge public art exhibition. You'll soon get an invitation from me called A Certain Party or Parties Unknown, about the 3 lynchings that occurred in downtown Rockville in the mid 1800s. And we'll have 6 artists doing projection mapping on the council office building, as well as the county courthouse and other places that directly address the lynchings. And we're using public art money to support the work of the Commission on Remembrance and Reconciliation, and also the Montgomery County Lynching and Memorial Project, to talk about this in a very public way, to bring to light the issues that we're still facing in Montgomery County as far as equity and inclusion are concerned. So we're able to leverage the funding that you're giving us in public art in many ways. And whenever you see anything in the public realm that's in disarray, I would urge you to contact us, because we do have a great map of all the public art around Montgomery County, and we do have a conservator who will go out and do the work, support the community to get those pieces of art up and running, because, you know, chipping paint is a hazard in the community, as well as if metal pieces were falling or that kind of thing. All of that is something that we want to avoid.
Awesome. Thank you. You, as always, you explained the question, answered the question, but went beyond it. And yeah, I had heard about the work you're doing with the Remembrance and Reconciliation Commission that Councilman Rice and I co-sponsored, and all of our colleagues supported. Really excited to see that move forward. So, and then my last I think it would be a very short question. I saw the number of grants are up, which is great. Shows the need there and you're using it. But I also saw that this program that you mentioned, I think in the packet, the BiPark Leaders cohort, which I was really excited to see about. And I just wanted to know how many folks are in it. And if you just give, for the millions watching at home, explain briefly what it is and how many are in it. I was very happy to read about that.
Well, I'll be announcing today that we. I'm sorry. Thank you, Council Member. I'm very excited that you are excited about our initiative. Let me say this, over the last several years, I have the wonderful opportunity to work with a group called Women of Color in the Arts. It's wonderful, but painful in a way, because there are about 10 or 15 of us who are women who I've known over 30 years, who have worked in the arts. And I know them because there were so few of us. No matter where we were, whether it was Los Angeles or Nova Scotia or Texas or New York or DC, I would be able to find them because there were just so few of us. And so, you know, I've had the great luxury to have fabulous jobs as CEO over the years at many different kinds of organizations. And it's sometimes wonderful, but often sad when people say, "Whoa, I'm so glad we found you. You know, it's hard to find Black leadership." And that's been hard for me to hear, because I do know that there are many, many, many qualified people of color on the planet who can do all kinds of incredible things, much greater even than I. And so when I hear that, that's really been painful. And so in my leadership, you know, as a mentor and now as a leadership coach, I've asked myself, how do I get people seen? Because I certainly am not the only one, as are any of you. And how do we get others seen? Well, we have to put them in the pipeline. And so this idea of this BiPark Emerging Leaders of Color coaching cohort is that we know that sometimes we've been put in these enviable or unenviable leadership positions. And sometimes we haven't had anybody to turn to, especially if we are moving into an organization or into a profession that has little cultural affinity with who we are as people. And we leave because we don't feel supported. We don't feel like there's anyone we can talk to. So the whole idea is, as I'm thinking about that question, wow, I'm so glad I found you, because I couldn't find any others, and how hard that was to hear so many times. How could I put people in the pipeline so that when others look, this is who they see? So the whole idea of it is that putting these young emerging leaders of color in the pipeline and supporting them wholeheartedly with coaches who can talk to them about how it feels to be in a culturally different or a culturally same organization. How do you grow? How do you be? And so this whole idea is to empower us so that as we look in the pipeline for others to follow in our footsteps, we can see ourselves, they can see us, and they are empowered.
I appreciate that, and sorry to jump ahead of your announcement. I'm sure it'll hopefully we just amplified it. But I'll pass it along. But it's funny you said that about the leaders. You know, this committee. Look at this Zoom. You know. I don't know if it's the first time ever. I don't know if Valerie and Nancy and Craig were on the same committee at the same time. I don't think so. I don't know. But the fact that you have 3 people of color on the Education and Culture Committee having this conversation. There's been 5 Black council members. There's been 2 Latino council members ever. There are people, but obviously we make up a large percentage of the population, and they're qualified, intelligent, smart people who could be serving in a whole array of duties, certainly on the county council and county government. So it's a reminder that we need to grow our own. And Councilmember Rice, we've all been trying to do that in different ways. You know, the Councilmember for a Day, Councilmember Navarro with their leadership program, and I've worked on things in summer rides and other things that we're all been trying to do that. But I'm just proud that this committee represents progress, but hopefully first but not the last of this type of having BiPark people in leadership positions to make decisions and to reflect the community. So glad you said that, and I'm glad that program is moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you. And you know, this is really exciting and warms my heart because, and I really mean this because it's so important for us. And I think Councilmember Navarro was saying it earlier about just how important this conversation is and this new dynamic of how we need to be as a council discussing these types of issues. And you mentioned something, Ms. Jenkins, that I think is one of the reasons why Councilmember, and that's the reason why I mentioned Councilmember Navarro in the strategy of us creating this new committee did, because I want to talk about that pipeline, right? And what Councilmember Juwanda was just talking about in terms of growing the next crop of leaders that are going to be in our arts and culture and humanities community. And I did note one of the things that we oftentimes hear from many of our parents within our schools is this, that they don't feel as though the arts is as represented as it used to be when they were coming up in schools. And so what has been to this point the discussion, because as I look at one of them, and so I'm going to be a little bit biased here because growing up, you know, I played piano and saxophone. And so music is big. We have a piano in our house. And my daughter was like, Dad, don't you have a saxophone? I want to play. And so I said, sure, baby. It's hard, though. And so she picked it up a couple times and put it back down. And now it's back down in the basement, unless Daddy dusts it off and plays every now and then. But when I look at music, again, going back to one of our charts and individual artists and scholars by discipline, I see so much in the visual art space, 51%, according to the chart. Writing about 3.6%, media at 9.1%, and music is at 12.7%. And I think to myself, well, that's kind of interesting because of my conversation with my daughter and in looking at, again, just my own, little world, but at Northwest High School, where we used to have a very large band, Seneca Valley used to have a very large band, and those bands are getting smaller and smaller in size. What is it that we can do to ensure that we continue to grow that next crop of leaders, as Councilmember Juwanda was talking about? How do we ensure that arts and humanities and culture remain cemented in our community for our upcoming generations?
Well, I think that we have to ensure that we're committed to STEM and STEAM, and that STEAM education is critical for us. I know we have a new superintendent. I have not had the pleasure of meeting her in person, but we have Zoomed together on more than one occasion with you. And I think just being able to say, what is Montgomery County's commitment to STEAM and why? And to answer the question easily, I think, is that we know that businesses today know and believe that creativity is one of the most important factions that they consider when they consider a new employee. Yes, the employee may come from your sector, but more importantly, that entrepreneurial, creative mindset that allows people to adapt quickly, that they are agile thinkers, that's important. So if Montgomery County makes a commitment in its educational view that STEAM education is critical and that the arts need to be integrated, then we, through your support, can support that endeavor. And we do now by certainly supporting artists and scholars, project grants in schools, we are also allowing artists to go right into the classroom and in concert with the teacher, integrate the arts more readily. But it can't be just us, because we certainly don't have the appropriation that would allow us to filter through, our many schools. It has to be a commitment from Montgomery County education that says that STEAM education allows students to come to the table with greater creativity, which makes them a higher and more employable workforce, which makes them more in demand and would help our county lift ourselves up. So I say that it is this partnership between what we're able to do to support artists alone, and then what we are able to do as a county as we think about Montgomery County Public Schools. That partnership together with an understanding that STEAM is integral. The conversations that I've seen, say the testimonies from kids from, say, Beyond the Bell and other things, that should be well integrated into what we think about education, not as a program that's just on the side, but every day that we think about Montgomery County Public Schools and education, the arts has to be integrated in it. If we make that statement from the top, then it will happen both from the bottom up and the top down. That's really critical in my view.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And so I think that what we'll need to do, Ms. Chen, is to work with Ms. Rodriguez-Hernandez about setting up another meeting for Education and Culture Committee to actually talk about STEAM, to talk about arts and humanities and education. It's perfect because it's our committee. And it's one in which really, and just talk about, as we're looking at new and innovative ways to ensure that our curriculum meets the needs of our students for the future, this is one of them, in incorporating that. And I couldn't agree with you more, Ms. Jenkins, in what you said about those skill sets that employers are looking for today. We know all too well that COVID-19 has made our communities become more innovative and creative in how they're approaching problems and challenges. And so from that perspective, they're looking for that in their employees. And it certainly is one in which we know that our arts and humanities and culture community lead in that effort of that creativity. It's something that makes a tremendous difference. So I think that that'll be a great follow-up for us. And yet another example, Councilmember Navarro, of a meeting in which we're not specifically focused on budgetary issues or approving this grant or that grant, but actually talking about things that are incredibly important to us in our community and how we can continue to strategize in moving them forward. So thank you very much for that. I did want to ask a question about, because Councilmember Juwanda had mentioned this about some of the murals and things like that. I know that we had talked about the mural or a potential project with a mural and our new homeless shelter that we're building in Rockville, and just wanted to try and see if we could get an update on how that progress is going, where things are at this point, because I think that's really exciting and could set an example for us of the myriad of ways in which we can incorporate our arts and our public county facilities throughout the county.
Right. I'm sorry to say I don't have an update, but that whenever the building is ready to take on the mural and our colleagues from that department are ready to move forward, we're more than happy to help with sourcing artists, making a public announcement about looking for artists and supporting the agency as it goes about it. We've done so with some Montgomery parks also. So whenever they're ready, we're ready to.
And I appreciate that. And so I want to take that a little bit further, because I think that, again, incorporating with our schools, and we can put this as a part of that discussion that we have with our school system as well. I remember when I went to, and now I'm trying to remember, which school has our black box theater?
Oh, that's in Silver Spring?
Yes, it's a middle school. And I'm blanking, and they're going to kill me because I went there and it was absolutely fantastic. It'll come to me in a second. But they had great murals throughout their school. And so I'm just very curious about whether or not, and I know some of our schools do. I've been and toured many of our schools. I know our colleagues have toured many of those schools as well. And so from that perspective, we see so much of that, but we don't see it as consistent. And so I think that, again, having that support from arts and humanities to be able to work with some of those schools where they may not have those kinds of things, to be able to say, hey, if you'd like to, we can provide you support, provide you with, some of the thoughts around what it is that you want to do. And it's Loiterman. Thank you very much to my chief of staff who reminded me very quickly that it's Loiterman Middle School. Shout out to them. But yes, it is one in which I think that it would be important for us to be able to try and provide that support. Is that something that Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County would be able to provide to our schools?
Absolutely. Montgomery County's first investment in public art was in public schools. And the unfortunate part is that when our funding was very low, it was hard to support those. And to be frank, to support stuff that's more outwardly facing, to get more public support for what we needed to do was a strategy that we had to employ. But now that our funding is closer to where it should be, we have been reaching out to schools and saying, look, we want to come, we want to see the art in your school, we want to see what we can do to support it. But hello, pandemic has kept us out of schools. So when we are able, we do have a good inventory of the artwork that was funded by Montgomery County that's in schools. We want to be certain to conserve those pieces of work. And some of the work, unfortunately, has fallen in disrepair. We've had to remove some. We want to make sure that we're getting in before that, so that if there's pieces that can be, conserved, we want to do that. So we're hoping that as things open up a little bit more and we are able to get into the schools and be helpful, we can do that.
Excellent. So we'll certainly make sure that we, Ms. Chen, have that as a part of our discussion as well. I think that would be important so that we can strategize around ways we can continue to support our Arts and Humanities Council and NCPS in ensuring, just as you said, that we shore up some of those pieces that are already in existence, but also seeing ways in which we can continue to grow. Because I know when I talked to some of the students at Loiterman about what those murals meant to them, the words inspiration and the positive influence and creating a welcoming environment, those are the kinds of things that I heard from them. And we know that that's what that means. And I was at Clarksburg High School not too long ago, and students who had actually achieved a perfect score on their AP tests were able to actually paint a block. So they had a brick on the wall, and they could paint it whatever they wanted to, obviously within reason, no profanities, anything like that. But it was a great opportunity for expression. And it really did inspire as we saw other students walking by, and they said, what do I have to do to be able to paint something on the wall? Right? What do I have to do to be able to paint a brick? And so it's those kinds of things that, again, have that conversation where a student may not have even thought about an AP exam, right? See, there's so much more to it than just the process of the perfect score, but it's the AP exam and talking about the AP exam itself and why it's important and why you should take it and all those. So it provides so many opportunities, like what Councilmember Juwanda was talking about earlier, when it's the murals and what it inspires. It's more than just an inspiration of hope and of change and of emotions that come out and feel. There's so many other aspects, right, that are tied to that. And so if we can elicit those kinds of things, it'll certainly be a betterment for our school communities as a whole. There's no question about that. So that's great. I think this has been a great discussion. Let me just turn to my colleagues and see if they have anything else additional. Councilmember Juwanda, Councilmember Navarro, I see them nodding. Ms. Chen, have we missed anything in terms of what we wanted to go over today? Well, Ms. Jenkins, let me just close by saying thank you. Again, as we opened and we talked about the challenges that we know that our arts and humanities community have faced throughout this pandemic, you've been at the helm and really steering the ship to make sure that it didn't run ashore or run upon the rocks. And so from that perspective, as the captain, we want to say thank you for keeping our arts and humanities and culture community safe. You have certainly done that and kept them afloat. So we certainly owe you a debt of gratitude for that, as do they. But certainly one in which we want to continue to be supportive. And now that we seem to be headed in the right direction. Look to us as that lighthouse that can lead you in a direction to calmer waters, to more opportunity. And so from that perspective, we just look forward to figuring out ways in which we can continue to support this great community that we know continues to support the community. So
thank you very much. I just want to say that your forward thinking approach and this conversation today is it's great, because it takes us out of the minutia of, what it is, down to the granular level, and kind of brings us out to a larger view of, what we're trying to accomplish here. So I really appreciate that, because I think that kind of strategic thinking is going to be important for us all as we think about what is the strategy. And that's going to be a big part of the cultural plan. Like, this thinking is really important as we think about, what it is that's happening on the Fed committee. What is it that's happening with economic development? What is it that we're trying? What are the goals that we're trying to accomplish? Is it just the AAA bond rating? Is it the combo pack? Is it moving the economy? Is it getting rid of homelessness and despair? What other things can we do together? So I really am so grateful when we see the growth in the sector, as well as where we see the pitfalls caused by the pandemic. Your forward thinking view of saying, okay, where was that demand? Oh, we've got, 24, 25, 26% more growth. Then meeting that basic growth, dealing with the emergency, and then looking forward for economic recovery. I think this is a great place to be. So I just want to tell you how much I appreciate this kind of strategic meeting, and how much I believe that it empowers us to work even more closely together as partners. And I'm very grateful. Your support makes my leadership very, very, very easy. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just follow up really quickly. This was also part of my presidency, Mr. Chairman, when we were mapping out how we do our work, because when we looked at our schedule, we get so caught up in budget, and then all of the things are in front of us, and we barely ever have opportunities to do this. So, having the time for oversight hearings was really important, and this seemed to be the most important part. But you just reminded me of why it was so critical to think through all of these things systemically. The Economic Development Platform seeks also to do that. And I only say that as well because in a complex county like ours, continually trying to figure out how to innovate the way we conduct business so it matches the growth and the complexities in the community is so critical. And what you just said reminds everybody that arts and humanities is very much a part of this. It's not an afterthought. It's not a fun thing to do. It's very much part of all of those big policy areas that you just mentioned. And as long as we keep connecting the dots and do it systemically and strategically, then that's when we start seeing quite a bit of progress. So it was music to my ears, because I feel like for a long time, I started feeling like I was becoming like this total wonk when it became, very wonky around systems and processes and things. But it's really, truly something we have to embrace in order to be good stewards of our taxpayers' dollars, which is why we're here as well. And so it kind of all makes sense. And I appreciate you closing with that, tying everything in that way. I appreciate that.
Hear, hear. Well, on that note, we will close. I really want to thank everybody again for their great participation. I certainly, no offense to Councilmember Navarro, think that our Education and Culture Committee is the best committee. No offense to Councilmember Juwanda and Fed, but we do some great stuff. And this is certainly along those lines in terms of that visionary thinking and supporting that, how we continue to strategize. So I really want to thank my colleagues. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Thank you, Ms. Chen. Welcome, Ms. Jackson. We really appreciate your support. You've heard from the County Council about how much we love arts and humanities. So please make sure you pass that on to the county executive, because I know as he's talking about formulating his budget, we want to make sure that our arts and humanities community remains a priority as it has been in the past. So really appreciate the support of the county executive and OMB. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Take care, stay safe.
Thank you.
And remember, that art is not what you see, but what you make others see. Take care.
Thank you.